Hello, how are you today? It's great to have you here. If this is your first time around, my name is Damaris, and in this channel I share all kinds of information, of reflections about things that can make it easier for you to go through a process of crisis, of personal crisis, a midlife crisis, an existential crisis, an identity crisis, a dark night of the soul. So if this is what you're at in life right now, welcome, and let's get started. Today with a follow-up on my previous video where I talked about this thing that happens as we go through this period of crisis, which is that we normally feel our energy levels are down, are not what they used to be. And in that video, I will put the link somewhere here. I did mention that there are things that drain our energy. There are three things that drain our energy. These things can also be sources of energy, depending on how we use them. And today I want to mention that there is an additional source of energy, which is impact. And impact means anything that creates a high impact in our life, such as going through a personal crisis. This is a high impact experience that generates an enormous amount of energy, and I know, believe me, I know that that's not how it feels like it. Actually, it feels like the opposite, that this is draining the energy out of our bodies. And I know this very well because I am someone which, under normal circumstances, I am very active. I have very high levels of physical and mental energy. And I went from what was normal for me, which was 2 to 3 hours a day of very high intensity physical activity. So I went from that to a point where it was difficult to manage even 20 minutes, 2 or 3 times a week of physical activity. It felt undoable. So I know that as we go through this high impact experience of crisis, of deconstruction, we don't feel that this is generating energy, but there is a lot of energy being built as you go through this experience. Impact creates energy. This is a law of physics, and we are not excluded from the laws of physics. The idea for this video came from the other day I was organizing some photos that I had on an SD card, and I saw some pictures from a trip that I took to the south of Mexico, so the Yucatan Peninsula and all that area near Cancun. And I remember that that's the area where millions of years ago a huge asteroid hit, and it was the second biggest impact recorded on Earth. And what happened when it hit, as that impact happened, is that a huge amount of energy was released, yes, because laws of physics. But what also happened when that asteroid hit was that there were very strong winds. I think I read somewhere that they were in the region of 1,000 kilometers an hour. There was a lot of just material that was scattered all around. There was a dusty layer of particles floating that clouded the atmosphere. There were earthquakes, there were tsunamis, there was the actual hole, yes, the crater that is still there. And what does this have to do with going through a personal crisis? Well, because impact creates energy. As we go through this high impact experience, there is going to be energy created and released. However, maybe what we experience the most, or what we experience in the first place, or where we're putting our attention, is in all the other consequences of this impact, such as, metaphorically speaking, the winds, the internal turbulence that we experience, the cloudiness, the confusion, the brain fog. Maybe what we experience now is a symbolic earthquake, is a tsunami, like we feel that we're being taken away with force and we don't know where we're being taken. Maybe what we are experiencing now is the crater left behind due to this impact. We experience this internal hole, yes? But it doesn't mean that the impact of this difficult experience has not generated any energy. So then, how come we don't feel it? How come we don't feel this energy, but rather the opposite? Well, because of the armor that we carry on us most of the time. What is this armor? These are the strategies, the mechanisms that we resort to many times automatically when we go through something challenging, when we go through a high impact experience, such as people pleasing, which I've said before, it can be disguised under people caring, such as emotional numbing, such as intellectualizing what's happening to us, such as overdoing, overacting to prove that we're not affected, to prove that we're strong, to prove that we're worthy, to prove that we are invincible, such as managing perceptions, how people see us, how we want them to see us as we go through this, such as dismissing our own experience by saying, it's just drama, it's just weakness, it's just a first world problem. All these things are the different expressions of that armor that blocks the release of the energy that's being generated as we go through a high impact experience. All these things that I've mentioned, they can be summarized or classified into three components, three building blocks of armor, which are denial, deflection, and performance. The energy that is being released as you go through this is being blocked by denial, deflection, and performance. And if you think about it, these three components, these three moves that make up our armor are all about contraction. The denial, the deflection, the performance is about guarding us, is about protecting us, and they're also about suppression. These are the signals that we are sending to our body. These are the signals that we're sending to our mind. So no wonder you are tired, no wonder you feel low on energy, no wonder we can't usually realize that there is actually an enormous amount of energy being produced in us as we go through this difficult experience, because through denial, deflection, performance, through carrying this armor, we are holding back an enormous tidal wave. Now, I want you to know that because a crisis, a personal crisis, involves some level of deconstruction, there will be a point where some part of the armor is going to drop naturally. This will usually happen towards the final stages of the crisis. So it's going to happen whether we want it or not. The thing is, if we don't want it, it's going to happen, the armor will drop, but it's not going to be nice. It's not going to be a pleasant experience. So what we can do is to get used to the process of dropping the armor gradually, so that at the end it becomes a bit of a softer and not so painful experience. And how do we do this? How do we soften the armor? How do we get used to dropping parts of the armor? I want to mention 4 things that you can try. So the first suggestion on how to soften this armor that is blocking the release of energy is allowing emotion without explanation. Sometimes you need to cry, but you don't need to explain why you're crying. You don't need to explain it to others, and especially you don't need to explain it to yourself. It's about breaking this association that we sometimes make that emotion needs to come together unavoidably with an explanation. Is not the case. And I know that this can be a difficult habit. It becomes a habit. It can be a difficult habit to break, because a few months ago I started crying in front of a stranger, and this is something that I had been already consciously working on not explaining any expression of emotion, but this was faster than me at the time. I realized that I was so tired at the end, but I wasn't tired because of the emotion of expression. I wasn't tired because of the crying. I was tired because of the effort of explaining, of making sense of it. The second suggestion is to tell the truth out loud, even if it's out loud to yourself. The truth meaning what this experience of crisis, of confusion, what this is really, really being like for you. What are the fears that are being triggered? What are the emotions that you're very uncomfortable dealing with? Tell the truth out loud to yourself. The third thing is allow the forbidden. And this has to do with what I said before about allowing emotion without explanation. The forbidden is not always related to emotions. They can be also thoughts. Yeah, we can forbid ourselves, we can ban ourselves from having certain thoughts. And this is a way to reinforce the armor. And this is a way to prevent the release of that energy that is being created under it. For example, in my case, the forbidden thought was that at the time I was in a relationship, I was married to a very good man, but it was not sustainable. And that was not the place for me to be in. And if that was not the place for me to be in, that was not the place where I was going to be in. This thought was forbidden. I forbid myself from having it because how could I? You can't imagine how draining and how damaging to your energy this is, this censorship. Sometimes we have this fear that if we think something is going to happen, allowing those forbidden thoughts doesn't mean we're going to act on them. We might act on them later on if they're important enough, but all it means is that you're being honest, and honesty is one of the things that is going to help disintegrate that armor. And the fourth suggestion is to drop out of performance mode. If you notice that this is something that you're doing, that you're spending a lot of time and energy managing the perception that others have of you as you go through this process or in your life in general, drop off performance mode for 30 minutes a day, for 1 hour a day, for 1 day of the week. And for these 4 suggestions, the allowing emotion without explanation, the telling the truth out loud, allowing forbidden emotions or thoughts, and dropping out of performance mode, it's important that you gradually increase the amount of time that you spend doing them. Yeah, so it's kind of gradual exposure, because this is what's going to help soften this very tight, very contracted armor that is preventing the release of energy. To recap and to end this video, impact generates energy, but only when we stop trying to deny, to hide, to edit, or to manage the full extent of that impact. Before I end this video, I want to mention something. There is something else that can help disintegrate gradually this armor that we're carrying, and that is to become familiar with the archetypes of self-rescue that we all carry within ourselves. These are sub-personalities or aspects of ourselves that can counter the elements of the armor, the denial, the deflection, the performance. I'm putting together a masterclass. It's going to be a free masterclass where I'm going to be looking in detail at what these 4 archetypes of self-rescue are. And I want to invite you to that. For more information, you can find it on my Instagram. I will put the handle here. If you can't find information there, send me a message also on Instagram. And I hope to see you there. I also hope to see you next time. But until then, take care. Bye-bye.